Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Saurabh Sanghvi and I'm a partner with McKinsey. And at McKinsey I have the privilege of leading a lot of our education and edtech work. And so to kick off, we thought we would take a very narrow topic of reimagining the future of education. And so to make that slightly manageable in 25 minutes, we're going to focus a lot more on immersive learning. And so to just ground the group on maybe 3 factoids to start. First, this trend is coming fast and is already happening. We recently did a survey and there are millions of users that are already using this technology. Second, it's happening everywhere. We believe that this could create up to $4 to $5 trillion of impact by 2030 across all sectors, including education. And then third, this is not video 2.0 or video 3.0. We really think that immersive tech has a huge role to play in practicing concepts, applying concepts, students and teachers giving feedback to each other, and collaborating. And so I want everybody to think about the scale of what we're talking about as we get into the discussion. And so joining us, we have Sandhya.
Hi, everyone.
And first of all, I'd like to congratulate you on your new role as the head of India for Meta. So congratulations on that. And she's been a pioneer in kind of taking these technologies to the next level. And so we're going to jump into a discussion, but before we do so, we thought it would be fun to actually show you something. And so let's cue up the video, please.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Classroom from the Future. Today, we want to start off by giving you a quick glimpse into how children across all age groups could be interacting and learning in just a few years from now using virtual reality. We know the inability to attend physical schools and classrooms deprives many children of a formal education. And at Meta, we think that in a few years, virtual reality can play a really pivotal role in bridging this gap. This can make education much more inclusive. With virtual reality, physical distances and barriers just collapse. And in an instant, and the classroom becomes much more immersive. And this is the future that we're investing in. We want to give you a glimpse of what that looks like. And I'm joined by my MetaMates, Kamyani and Ojasvi. Hi. Hi, Kamyani.
Hi. Hi, Sandhya.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Ojasvi. Okay, ever since I was a child, I always wanted to sit at that teacher's chair and write on the blackboard. Should we try that today, Kamyani and Ojasvi?
Yeah, let's do that. Why don't you just hop over and try that?
Actually, I can do that with just a single click. So let me try that. Oh, here I am. Hey.
Hi.
So what should we learn today, class? Oh, Kamyani's come closer as well. What should we learn today?
How about making of some fun reels?
Or how about the making of Pathan?
Both sound really fun, but let's save that for coffee. How about we take something a little more serious and something that I always loved when I was a kid, the solar system.
Yeah, we could do that.
Ojasvi doesn't seem very enthusiastic, but we'll make this fun, I promise. Think about the time when we were learning about the solar system. What if it was much more immersive? Shall we try that?
Yeah, let's do that.
So let's learn about the solar system. I was thinking when I was growing up, and we talked about the solar system, how amazing would it have been for me to actually see this and pull this up and visualize it and see how the solar system actually worked. What do you think?
It looks really cool. Yeah.
And it's immersive, and I can actually see it and learn from it. Access to books and learning is another key challenge that many students in India face. Virtual reality helps educators by creating immersive lessons that are engaging, memorable, and impactful. We think virtual reality, when combined with augmented reality, makes learning really powerful and can be incredibly impactful. We may or may not be in the same physical space. Like Ojasvi, Kamyani, you're sitting in entirely different conference rooms. But the collaborations and interactions we are having are happening in real time, and which is amazing. I'm really looking forward to the next 20 minutes with you, Saurabh, as we talk about the future of education and how immersive tech can really, change learning and make it much more experiential for all of us. Good job, class. It's actually fun writing with sticky notes and virtual classroom. Children, let's say bye-bye.
Bye.
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 That was some suspect acting, but it was fun.
I was going to say something. Clearly, there's another career for you in acting. So before we get started, Sandhya, I'd love for you to just introduce yourself, share a little bit more about your background, and maybe as a fun question, can you share maybe a childhood memory that still sticks with you from your education?
Thanks, Saurabh. And it's great to be here and be back here in India. And thanks, Ashwin, for that lovely intro. We go back a long way. I'm Sandhya. I recently just started my new role as the VP of Meta in India. I've been with Meta for 7 years. And before that, I was a banker. I spent 15 years as a banker building product, portfolio management, getting calls from various regulators. So that was my life for 15 years across multiple countries. And I'm an engineer by training. Grew up, studied here, and then had an international career. And that's my background. My memory that really sticks with me, and I think that I sort of gave it away in the video, right? The memory that sticks with me is going to the Birla Planetarium for the first time and just being fascinated by space and watching it come to life. And many years later at Meta, I had the opportunity to spend a week in Houston with an astronaut, a retired astronaut at the NASA facility, and we had a leadership training program then. And that sort of brought back all those memories of the first time that I'd experienced it. So when I put that video up, I wasn't joking. It's truly experiential learning and means a lot to me, and that's a memory I carry with me to this day.
Great, thanks, Sandhya. So maybe to start, when we start thinking about immersive technology, one of the big drivers of that is the fact that we're really seeing a different consumer in terms of their needs, behaviors, and this is not only the student of the future, but it's also the parent of the future. And so, given that you're at Meta, I'd love for you to just talk about how is consumer behavior change changing? What are some of the trends that you're seeing?
I think just what we've seen in the last 3-4 years, right, worldwide, and especially with COVID, this mass sort of transformation and the huge digital adoption that's happened worldwide is certainly something that all of us in the room are familiar with. But what astounded me, even as I onboarded, and even from afar when I was looking at India, was just the pace at which this was happening in India itself, right? The fact that payments have become so easy now, the fact that digital goods and public services are much more easily available now. I think there's just a big tectonic shift in consumer behavior in India. Match that with the fact that many of you are entrepreneurs in the room and venture capitalists, just the amazing entrepreneurship and the startup culture that's happening in India. That's something that's been very inspiring for us as a company at Meta to sit and watch. And we've been truly inspired by what's going on in the Indian ecosystem. And part of the reason I came back was just that energy and what I'm seeing happening here. So when we look at what that means in terms of consumer behavior, I think a couple of things. People in India are getting super comfortable with digital in every which way. If you think about even internet penetration, 900 million people in another 2 years. So I think this is a shift and a march that's happening. What that means is that people are not just comfortable shopping and doing commerce and making payments. I think they're also getting increasingly comfortable with other digital technologies. So let me talk about AR, right? So VR, what I just showed you, maybe many years away. But what we're seeing on our platform today is 750 million people use AR effects on our platform today. So it's here. People are comfortable with it. People are using it. Many of them in India as well. What we're also seeing is this was a Meta-commissioned research, but we wanted to find out consumer behavior, and we went and asked people, whether they were comfortable with AR, VR technologies. And what they said was during Diwali, 74% of the shoppers said that they would, AR, VR could influence their buying decisions, and they're more likely to buy with AR, VR effects. I may get that wrong. I'm still onboarding, but I was pretty amazed at that stat. And lastly, even on Reels, we're seeing this explosion of short-form video, as a company as well, on all our platforms, but especially in India. And what we noticed was across the globe, 40% of reels now use AR effects. So I think if you see that technology, and usage of augmented reality is very much happening, and it's here and now. If I think about VR, some of the experiences that I've had, I talked about classroom learning, and we were in different conference rooms, but it really felt like we were together and we were having this conversation. So I think that is, the potential's immense. But even closer home, there is a startup called Autoverse who I had the good fortune of meeting a few weeks ago in Bangalore. And they've trained tens of thousands of people in plants to actually set up reactors. So they're doing it through virtual reality. You could think about visiting the pyramids of Egypt and in Giza, using your headset. All of that immersive learning is definitely not too far away. So I think AR is very much here. I think VR, the possibilities are endless. The last thing I would say is moments in history and time. I actually did a diversity training where I became a Latina engineer for half an hour, and I experienced the various discriminations that she was facing. I sort of also related. I was an engineer and a woman, so I was like, okay, I can sort of, I know this. But those are the possibilities that exist. We just announced a tie-up. I think if any of you in Bangalore should go to the Museum of Art and Photography. There was a colleague of mine who's in the room today posted this really engaging video of using AR filters to learn more about a Jamini Roy painting. So there's applications in learning culture. Like, the possibilities are pretty endless, I would think.
Thanks, Sandhya. And as the consultant in the room who's in charge of fact-checking, I can agree with the statistics that you sent. Our survey showed that 60% of consumers are excited about the future of the metaverse, and that includes both the next generation of students, but also adult learners. And so I think the impact that you're talking about is not just potentially in K-12, but also in higher ed and in workforce skilling. And so we've talked a lot about the positives, and there's all kinds of profound impact from some of these technologies. But I'd love to talk a little bit about some of the challenges and what could be hard. And so, when you start thinking about the metaverse and some of these technologies in India, how hard or easy do you think it's going to be to bring this tech into everyday classroom learning, especially in the Indian context?
So we've always, as a company, even when we rebranded to Meta, we talked about metaverse as a vision being a decade away, right? So in metaverse, if we think about internet as something that we look at, metaverse is really experiential and immersive for us. We saw that in that video, but that vision is some time away and not fully accessible to everyone just yet, right? But we strongly believe that that's the future, and that's why we're making pretty disproportionate investments in that. That being said, AR, like I said, is here and now. It's, you can use that in classrooms. And we actually have, I know it's post the lunch hour, so we thought we'd wake you up with a cool demo. So if you can pull up the QR code, please. So I'd love for all of you to take your phones out. And what you'll see here is, and then zoom into a spot. What you see here is a little demo of pollination, right? And we'll play the video just in a second. But this is a simple, easy way for people to actually, and this is the video that's being played, this is what you'd see. You'd see how pollination actually works, and you do it in a very sort of just using your phones in a 2D way. So this is not VR, this is AR. And we think this has pretty massive use cases, and we're seeing that already come to life on our platforms.
Give everybody a second to play with that, but maybe Sandhya, while they're playing with the AR, I'd love to hear more broadly, how is Meta thinking about getting this technology into the hands of students and citizens around the world, including in India, and specifically one of the things that I found interesting from our conversations is how you're also thinking about safety and equity at the heart of that.
Great question, Saurabh. So I'll talk about India because let me talk about globally what we're doing. So we have an open source program. So we believe on the AR side of the house, the more we make it accessible, the more people that learn the tools, the more developers that actually use them, it becomes accessible to all. So when we think about accessibility, it's not just about getting headsets into the hands of people, but also using the phone as an entryway. So if you think about Indians and, their first point of entry being the mobile phone, we think the bridge to the metaverse will actually be 2D and will be through AR, right? So we think that's going to be the future. Having said that, what are we doing as investments? So we have a Meta Spark program that's an open curriculum. It's self-paced, it's self-taught. So that's open to all, and that's for developers, for enthusiasts, whoever wants to learn. Like I said, there's 750 million people who've experienced an AR effect on our platform, so we think this helps with that. The other bits that we've done is we've announced a partnership with CBSE because we think it's important for young children to learn early on not just digital citizenship, but the curriculum also includes AR, VR, and our commitment there has been 10 million students and 1 million teachers. So far, we're at 300,000 teachers and around 1.1 million students. So it's a 3-year commitment. So we're pretty committed there as well. What we're doing in the field of XR is India is slated to have the largest developer base in the world by 2024. So we're quite excited by the possibilities there. So we've announced a $2 million fund with METI, where we're training. It's both an accelerator and there's a grand challenge. So the idea is to get a lot more developers and startups thinking about XR. And what's been heartening, and I was looking at the stats, and this really stood out for me, is that 40% of people who've applied to be in the grand challenge are from Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. 20% are women. So it's also inclusive. And as you think about accessibility, that seems like a number that we want to go after and continue to invest in. We also have an XR fund with FICCI that also looks at startups and how we can build more XR ability in the country with these startups. So there's mentoring, there's education, so we're quite invested in that.
That's fascinating. I'm going to attempt a hard pivot. And so one of the things that's fascinating, of course, is that many folks in the room are all customers of Meta. And I know, Sandhya, that you also have been involved in investments, including An Academy. And so I'd love to hear a little bit of, as you think about the EdTech space, and Ashwin was highlighting this, really this is India's moment. Some of the stats that we've seen is now 20% of global investments in EdTech are in India. And so as you think about the sector more holistically, what are some of the big trends that you're seeing?
Ashwin and I started working at Citi a long time ago, but then we also worked when he started his company. So I had a ringside view into how EdTech was taking off, not just in India, but globally as well. So it was fascinating to watch. One of the things that we definitely saw on our platform, post-2020, was just as people were locked down, staying at home, that was the moment that you really saw, and all of you know this, you saw EdTech take off in a massive way. We saw conversations on our platform increase by 10x on Facebook and Instagram related to EdTech. What I would say is that this is a trend that's here to stay. You may see short-term volatility. You may see people go back to classrooms. You may see trends around, K-12 versus skilling. But I do think online learning is here to stay, and those investments, I feel pretty bullish about it. And we were talking about this just at breakfast today, right? Skilling would be a huge thing. So if I look at trends, I see 2 trends. One is I see a lot more EdTech companies going global. So even in India, we worked with many of you possibly in this room around taking your companies global. So that's one thing that I do see, because education transcends boundaries, and digital enables that. The second thing that I also see is just around what we're seeing on skilling. So a lot more, EdTech's focused on skilling, because especially I was thinking about my own career journey. I've had to pretty much do hard pivots every time and learn new things and new skills, and I think that's going to be, all jobs of tomorrow are going to be like that. So enabling that is also a trend that I do see. So we've worked with a lot of edutechs around their expansion, around thinking about how do we enable their strategy, but I'm also seeing a lot of interest and excitement around skilling.
Got it. So going global and then thinking about lifelong learning as well. And one of the fun breakfast topics that we talked about, just because you can't have a panel in today's day and age without talking about generative AI and ChatGPT, was how we both need to think about reskilling in our professions as a result of that.
Yeah, my son's school taught him ChatGPT, how to use it, so I'm very worried.
I'm glad we made it at least 20 minutes before we brought that up. So maybe one last question is, one thing that's top of mind for the sector, and I'm sure of just the entire kind of consumer tech industry, is the macroeconomic environment. And so would love, your thoughts on just, given everything that's happening in the macroeconomic environment around tech companies, around geopolitics, how do you think some of these things are going to impact the edtech sector? And what advice might you have for some of the leaders in the room?
And we were chatting about this as well, Saurabh, in the morning. One of the things that I do see, and I remain really optimistic, and as a company as well, we remain really optimistic, is around, even as there are short-term headwinds, I think long-term, the prognosis for edtech is, let me give you, you'll listen to the stats all day long, but there are 1.2 million kids in India that are not in school, most of them in elementary school, right? I think a survey that you did at McKinsey talked about 60% of people, needing to upskill on the job. I think the opportunities both around, K-12, when I looked at the letter, it said K to Gray. I think the opportunities abound, right? The GSV Emeritus Invitation letter. The opportunities abound, and there are big challenges and problems to solve. That being said, I think the things that we are definitely noticing as we work with, edtech startups across the globe is just this focus on profitability. The days of Fed easy money are drying up, so I think so obviously, a huge focus on profitability, laser sharp prioritization, focus, targeting, and getting the right kind of consumers, and if you get the students, how do you keep them engaged versus just one lesson and done? Those are things that we are seeing. I think in the short term, obviously there's going to be volatility, consolidation, but in the long term, I think this is the way to go. And as you can see from our company's investments, priorities, focus, we do firmly believe that immersive learning will be the future as well. So I feel excited and optimistic.
Great. Well, thanks, Sandhya, for the conversation. I think everybody can see there's a huge opportunity in immersive learning. India can be one of the leaders of this moment. In many ways, this could be something that can actually drive access and equity. But also, remember, profitability is going to be important based on what Sandhya is sharing. So thank you all for the conversation, and looking forward to a wonderful conference.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Saurabh and Sandhya. That was a great conversation.